Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. Today's title is a poetic one, and it's titled When the Soul Opened the Mind from Within. And usually I don't tend to use the word within often because the meaning for it for me is not really conceptual when I speak about the inner realms. There is a poem that finds us from 700 years ago, or so, maybe more even, from the Sufi mystic poet named Jalaluddin Maulana Rumi. He says, I have lived on the lip of insanity, on the edge of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. It opens. I have been knocking from the inside. And in many of these talks, if you're a usual listener, I have explained, in some sense, I see that what you see in front of your eyes, it can be considered as the objective realm. Usually it's objects in front of our eyes. The sensory perception is occurring. Now, behind our eyes, we are not an object to ourselves. We are a subject. When you close your eyes, there is an awareness. There is an attention dwelling behind those closed eyes. Now, that attention, there's two ways to perceive it, and I'm going to share with you because it oscillates in history. There was a time people saw it the other way. Now they see it in a certain way. In the future, they're going to see it another way. Then they're going to see it a certain way. And what it is this constant attempt to see that is it just the body projecting the mind? And in some cases, especially for those mystically minded, is the mind projecting the body simultaneously? Because the action of free will, right now me speaking to you, it feels like my mind is doing this. It feels that my mind is moving my mouth right now, projecting these words. So it feels like even though the body has led to the projection of the self, to the position of it, but the way this self functions doesn't seem to be just from a purely material stance. You see, I found it fascinating, ever since just pretty much any human being who's raised in this world, you are named. That is very initial. You're given a name. And then after a certain point of your environment communicating to you and whatnot, you in some sense vocalize into a creature. You become individual. You awaken into your individualness. It's not like the child is born knowing what its dreams are. Can you imagine the child? The child doesn't have a psychology that is separate from the environment. One thing that one can say there is something there in the sense that the child responds to touch, to temperature, to movement, to sensitivity, to its immediate condition. So in this episode, I want to take mainly the mystical crossroad because it is a question that has been approached in different ways, with a different level of mystery, with a different level of abstraction. Different cultures have approached it. This idea that we feel there is a field moving the particles in it, or the particles are moving the field. That's pretty much the oscillation in history I see. In ancient Greece, if you didn't believe there were gods walking in clouds, you were the fool. In modern times, if you do believe gods are walking on the clouds, you're a fool. Do you see? It's as if every moment in history is speaking its own language of authorization, of what the creatures have accepted to be valid. When a child goes to the educational system, what is that child being taught? What is this knowledge that we all are running after? I have looked at this life in various moments, just when you live long enough here, you get to see through many eyes. And there has always been an unknown factor to how the knowledge is happening. That what we think is known is a comparison between 2 points of reference. When we don't know the origin, when we can't look that far back, and when we don't know the future, technically civilization is the dream of empty space. You know, I don't know how a lot of militant atheists are very calm, because it is as if it's not that just God doesn't exist, it's that nothing exists. You see, that is the issue with matter, because if it's atoms moving, then who the hell are you? So it's a certain potential, it's a certain through the trials and tribulations of evolution, we have awakened to our position. Now, this idea that Rumi said, Rumi pretty much in that quote I shared with you, this poet, he was saying that he was looking for questions and he went to the edge of the language threshold. The language threshold is a concept I've designed, which literally nobody had given this a word, and I'm giving it. The language threshold is this idea that an experience is occurring beyond beyond the language that can contain it. Do you see? Isn't it fascinating that religious people till the end of time can read Revelation only to realize that the Creator is not a concept? It is inconceivable. Concepts, they are created and they can be destroyed. But this notion of an ultimatum in the sky, like the center of reality being a mind, not a body, that is a different situation. Because the astrophysicist is at most, nobody knows really what the center of the universe is, but because we can't have the right scale, if there's a subtle dimensional shift, if there's one thing that is a little bit unknown, we're like, okay, we don't know anything about the system. So as far as I'm concerned, as long as there is a black hole, and if we have the technology to go through a black hole, it's pretty much everything is unknown. There's a black hole in space, in outer space, for God's sakes, people. It's like, oh damn, the material universe is leaking antimatter. There's a black hole in it. So the approach this mystic, the Sufi mystic Rumi had, is that he was wondering and he was asking about the nature of the external realm. Pretty much what you see in front of your eyes is your world. And its nature is so vast, and the way the human being has an awareness to it, Robert M. Persick, this author, he said, it's like there's this infinite beach of information, and all the sands on the beach are all the different ways that reality can be real, and it's as if we have taken a handful of sand and we think this is everything in the world. Even I'm speaking to you, I've taken a handful of sand. Every person you know has taken just a handful of sand based on where they are raised. This is another thing of why I keep ushering people to kind of strive for an advanced civilization. Because certain problems are collectively answered. I can't tell you. It's kind of hilarious, selfish, altruistic. Like it's like this. Okay, let me tell you. It's like the idea of the bodhisattva in Buddhism, and people were like, "Yo, what is the Buddha doing? What is the bodhisattva doing?" You know, and the Buddha was going towards a sort of self enlightenment. The Buddha was like, "I'm a self out of nowhere. I don't know what's up with this. Let me go figure it out." But but the bodhisattva was very different. The bodhisattva was coming down from the mountain. The Buddha was climbing up. The Buddha is there. There's certain human beings on this planet. Literally, they have come into this world to have an individual relationship. They have not come here to be around people. Do you know? And that's through a mystical context of speech, of course. Because you see, the unknown can be projected anywhere. Anywhere there's a nanosecond of doubt. Do you know everything can be doubted into extinction? We can doubt ourselves into no ability. What Rumi means is that he was trying to answer a question, but he realized the answer was exactly where the question was happening. You see, it was the same thing that happened to Rumi, Jalaluddin Maulana Rumi, where he's like, I suddenly found that I've been knocking from the inside, as if it's the mind, if it's like, if you treat yourself as a body that has a mind, that's projecting a mind. If you see the objective realm first, then the subjective realm, then your subjective realm is limited to what the objective realm allows. But if you see the subjective realm, then your objective realm is not limited to the to this. Your subjective realm is not limited to the objective realm, but you can also deviate from the objective realm. This is why I feel like the mind of the human being, there is whoever's looking for some secret key to truth. Feel free to continue the journey, but at the same time realize this life is more like a surfboard. It's not about one idea that's going to rule them all, like Lord of the Rings style. You know, it's in some sense a balance of how much you're aware of the space and how much you're aware of what's going on in the space. This is the core of alertness. You notice this, you become street smart in any environment. You see, because there is a sort of significance of psychology being the next sign of an intention. That means when a decision is made, usually after that decision you see behavior. And if a person makes a decision, there's decisions that grab onto things and there's decisions that let go. Okay, if you let go of certain things, it's like there have been many moments in my life where I've automatically, it's like literally I've forgotten that view or that memory or that intensity, you know? It's like life scares you a couple times when you run laps around the sun, but after a while you're like, yo, this is life, it behaves this way. You're like, look at this life, you know, not knowing it's a lie. Life is alive in phenomenal ways. It is alive in ways we can't even describe. And that was the thing, because I was kind of raised between an Eastern discipline, like you know, when I was younger, when I was younger, I didn't see it as a good thing. But years later, when I came to kind of look at the world, I'm telling you, it's like every moment of your life has a value, but it's only up to you to evoke that value, to see that value. When a person has a judgment on themselves, the inner realms stop moving on their own. When you move the inner realms, they stop moving on their own. That means you step out of the room of the inner realms. Because the mind is not an object. That's a clue. That's the biggest clue we have, that there is something unknown, more unknown than we think that the known can validate. That means I was thinking, wait a minute. I was like, you telling me we are 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and we have created technically language, our own, the species created this, creature created this system of symbolism. And then I was like, whoa. So are we painting our own picture and thinking that is knowledge? Right? I thought that. That's why I'm constantly telling people that the educational system might feel an apocalypse. And what is that apocalypse? That apocalypse is simply this idea that what knowing is surpasses a dualistic relationship. And it gave me goosebumps when I noticed the yogis thousands of years ago had spoken about non-duality. Many traditions have spoken about non-duality. Non-duality means that the child is raised in a world where it's a constant. Right now, the person, if they're stressed or depressed or something, what is that? That's a moral axis. That's like a way where they feel something is right and a way where they feel something is wrong. Not that this is not crucial. Duality is crucial. I'm not telling you get rid of your ego. I'm just saying the ego is like an egg. If it breaks from the outside, there's no life. If it breaks from the inside, there's life. And if there's a transformation that occurs from within you, and this transformation is not storified. You see, every person, it's called, I don't know, they should probably call it something. It's like the novice mistake of esotericism and metaphysics. It's like the Fools Metaphysics. You know what the Fools Metaphysics is? The Fools Metaphysics is a physical relationship with a non-physical dimension. This is why I'm telling people, I walk in a school of thought where the soul doesn't have a personality. I don't, this transmigrating soul that, even though I share that, you don't know how many people on this planet are, I got shocked when I found it out, but it's fascinating, many people feel that they have been on this planet before they've been born. And many people feel that after this life, they will never be around. You see, so we're just creatures that are playing a game with how far we can fathom conception being displayed as us. But when we realize whatever ideas we have in the future is still being now, then there is a totally different life. When the mind opens from within, I mean, René Descartes didn't say this, but I'm kind of seeing a similar pattern, that when René Descartes doubted everything, René Descartes' kind of approach to truth was a sort of methodical doubt where he was doubting everything, and he's like, let me see what I can't doubt. He was using doubt as a sieve for truth. And he was pouring his questions through it. And he realized he cannot doubt the isolated thinking subject. And that's what I feel the poet Maulana Rumi means when he says, I've been knocking on a door wanting to know, I have lived at the, God, what was the quote? I have lived on the lip of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. The door opens. I've been knocking from the inside. That knocking from the inside is like the same moment that René Descartes noticed he can't doubt the doubter. It is your presence. It is your presence that is the space for your mind. Did you know your mind has space too? It's not just your body. But the space of the mind is different. It is not, it's kind of very strange. We have lived for so long as human beings that to fathom that our intelligence could suddenly become non-dual is a shock. And that's why I was thinking, how would civilization handle this? In one of my science fiction novels, I gave an answer to this, a future. I wrote it in my science fiction because I don't know how intense the response is. But in my science fiction novel, I've written a world set in the year 5025 where there's all sorts. I've literally given myself, like I remember when I was writing it, I gave myself this permission to go just as if like I'm alive once. Let's see what the most next level novel I can write is. For myself, from my own eyes. When I realized I don't have the eyes of other people, that was the day I realized how hilarious it was that I could never compare myself to anyone. I don't have their eyes. How can I compare myself to who they see who they are? Sri Ramana Maharshi, this very liberated yogi, he says, "Be silent, for the wisdom will find you." He's kind of saying, you don't have too many instructions in this life. You are being your instruction booklet, which is your DNA. And your DNA gives you access to a field where there are variables that separate from your free will. That means my free will right now, its jurisdiction is over my body. It is over whatever I do with this body, and to how far my senses are seeing in this moment. But you have to be able to notice where the jurisdiction of your free will ends, and this is the most crucial thing. A lot of people on this planet want to be honored, not realizing that, as George Baton says, you must serve before you command. You must notice uh, an ability experientially. Every skill that I feel I have as a being is really, it's based on my experience. Because experience is like long term. It's like you're living in the long term memory. It's very direct. to continue. You know, if someone asks you, dear listener, what is a mystery of your life? In what areas of your life do you notice the unknown? Do you see the unknown? And have you ever in your life honored the unknown by trusting the moment? For example, on an adventure or whatever. I feel this whole thing about there's so many poets in history who've written mystical hymns. It's ridiculous. It's like too many human beings on this earth. When you go look at the different philosophers there were, the different kinds of views they had, and it is true that there was a more uh, gullibility back in the day. You know, it's as if like the inner realms aren't as discreet as it is now. Right now, at least we think we're thoughts. You know, even though that's not the case, we're not a thought. But back in the day, it's like somebody was saying that the first time thought was emerging, for example, the savageness was happening, was that it's like the thought would emerge and the person couldn't identify that thought, couldn't notice that that was a thought, and the person felt it was a voice. But the whole concept of the thought is very abstract, because how many types of thoughts are there? You know, and if there's different types of thought, what does that mean about the nature of thought? I think a very simple way to look at consciousness is that what we see in front of our eyes is the candle. It's the candle body that's made of wax, and the flame is the consciousness. And right now, as I'm speaking, I acknowledge, I'm sure everybody else does, we acknowledge that we're not kind of, we're temporary beings, physically. So the body is, it's like the whole question is about, does the candle flame linger after the wax is gone? Like that's the whole afterlife ordeal. So I would say that Rumi understood or accessed a state of mind where the cause and effect were occurring in the same moment. As if imagine something being caused, but that moment being caused not stopping. The cause is aware of its effect. Isn't that what we call mindfulness? Isn't that what our consciousness is? Something is emergent, and this emergent property of nature, it is aware of its effect. It's aware of what it can say. It is aware of the various images that pass through the mind, you know, like a wind between the branches of the thoughts. I think when a human being, in a mystical sense, finds an allegiance with space, that means the concept of absence, it becomes a very natural concept for you. Like, isn't it strange that we feel very comfortable with our existence, but we suddenly feel not comfortable with our non-existence? You know, but inevitably, everything changes. It's an entropic universe, and it's all the approach. You know, on some level, because we're temporary beings, it's as if on you can say, all right, you're temporarily here, believe whatever you want. It's like have fun. You know, that's the thing. But because there is a discrimination that the nature of the mind may not just be as subjective as we feel, or may not just be as objective as we see it, you know, it's like the landscape changes. A non-dual moment is a watching silence. Is watching the silence. Watch your silence and stillness, and you know your presence before you know it. Like pun intended, before you know it. Terence McKenna, this scholar, he spoke about this phenomena of a higher mind in an interesting way. I don't remember what lecture it was, but in this lecture, Terence McKenna the scholar was looking at how there are some people, for example, like, I don't know how many people know this, but if you go to Arizona in the Mount Shasta area, you're going to find some very interesting people who feel they are in contact with aliens. Like, there's YouTube videos on this. Now, what that means is that person feels there's a higher mind that has come into the human being, and the human being is speaking as that alien. For example, the whole channeler phenomena we see in the New Age community. And before that, even, it was the concept, of course, we find it in Christianity, of glossolalia induced through the presence of the Holy Ghost, which is as if, like, I don't know, it's like God is moving you in that moment. There is no you in that moment. A sort of metaphysical angle, at least to the degree I have perceived of Christianity. So Terence McKenna was saying, similar to how these channelers are a higher mind is coming into a lesser body, it was this idea, Terence McKenna was saying, this idea that a lesser body goes into a higher mind. And that's the whole mysticism we find in Vedic culture, this whole vacuum of the mystical path towards the non-dual, but where are you left? Where are you left after you have realized why the light is in your eyes? And that's where, right now, the world, people choose different paths. I'm that person who's saying it's a round circle, like I'm shouting that to every spiritual person. That means you feel there's something, like in ancient mystical context, that, again, life was a dream. Life was a dream. The dude's like, okay, simulation. Like it was, they consider it as a simulation before it's a simulation. But Mr. Within is saying, when you awaken, you realize the content of the dream had nothing to do with the dream. The state of mind was the dream. And that's the thing. I think every human being has to find their mind. You know, instead of teachers looking at the grades of the kid and being like, holy shit, this kid's pretty stupid. Instead of the teacher being like that, the teacher should look at the kid and be like, you get an F because you haven't found your mind yet. And what does that mean, find your mind? I see that as the kind of neo be yourself, in quotations. You know, that's the thing people say, be yourself. This is the neo, the new way of that, where it's like the person's like, where have you found your mind? Because when you find your mind, let me tell you what the most immediate, instantaneous change is. Your heart, literally how you feel as a being, for the first time, steps out of its ethnocentric sphere. And you feel space is watching matter. And it is in that moment where only honesty opens the next part. And the next part, Mr. Within is saying, is not to escape to some higher dimension where we're all like one eternal soup of energy, you know. It is to run towards the civilization that we have been designed for. You know, there's so many people who they're like, especially through a monotheistic context, they're like, God put this world for us. Yet none of those people are seeing the world because they're all trying to go to the afterlife. It's insane. It's insane in a beautiful way. It is kind of how Rumi in his poetry, where he was like, true love in a blind society is, in some sense, Rumi said it. Guys, keep in mind, this was a poet from 700 years ago. Okay, he said this imagery where this true love for living, it arises, and this love is like a madman running into the forest, taking out its clothes. And it's a metaphor for a conscious return to your animal instincts. Do not fear the animal that you are. Pilot your moment. It is the privilege of being. What else can you do in the moment? There's the story. It's a Sufi story. And it kind of explains, I feel, the whole bodhisattva archetype. In this story, there are three friends, three Sufi friends. They're at the edge of town. They notice mysteriously a giant wall a giant wall just exists at the edge of their town. As these three friends are walking, these three Sufi friends, it's a Sufi story I'm sharing. They see a giant ladder that goes to the top of this unknown wall that has appeared at the edge of town. And only these three friends can be seen right beside this wall. They see this ladder, the two hold the ladder, and one of them goes up to see what is the mystery beyond the highest wall we shall climb as a species. And so the first person goes, and he sees the Garden of Paradise. He sees the heaven and earth. And the guy sees it and he says, "Oh my God, the Garden of Paradise." He jumps in without looking back. There's a point to this. The second friend climbs up. Now one friend is left holding the ladder. The second friend climbs up bravely to go see. The second friend sees. And again, the same reaction as the first friend. "Oh my God, the Garden of Paradise, heaven." On the other side of that wall was heaven. And so the second friend is about to jump in like the first one, but he's like, "Yo, let me tell the third friend." And he says, "Yo." It's like, "Yo." And then the other guy's like, "What?" He says, "The Garden of Paradise is up here. The first friend jumped in. I'm going to jump in too." And he jumps in. Now the third friend, which is one of the most intense archetypes, the first friend looks at the ladder, looks that there is no one to hold it, sees that he has to trust the shaking ladder of his life. He climbs. He gets to the top. His eyes finally see it. His eyes see the Garden of Paradise, and his intuition, his conscious, every sense of self he has had a memory of is shouting at him, "Walk, go in." He raises one foot, and he's about to dive in. And he turns around, and he says, "Oh my God, the Garden of Paradise is here. The whole world should know." Sorry guys, I got a bit emotional and I had to drink iced tea to change. Every human being is driving somewhere. Their attention falls upon some realm. That sensory realm gets processed into some sort of inner landscape. That inner landscape becomes some sort of pattern of functioning. I feel we should not fear our minds, we should study them. I found it fascinating that the educational system says, study, study, keep studying, kids, keep studying, but never do the students ask, what are we studying? And the issue is that when you don't see the real world, the inner realms will feel alone. The inner realms are like, I feel personally that in the future, let's give it a time span of, I don't know, just to be safe, I say 10,000 years. But I feel it could happen if there's a sort of digital technological revolution, maybe, I don't know, less than 600 years, where human beings will not walk this earth as individuals. And the question comes, what are they walking the world as? Believe it or not, before language, the world. The world is being the world before you are being you. It's like, what greater light in your eyes do you need than that? When the soul opened the mind from within, and as I was sharing a bit earlier about Terence McKenna speaking about going into this higher mind, you see, I feel there's two sorts of evolution. I feel there is an objective evolution which is horizontal and a subjective evolution which is vertical. But the subjective evolution is internal, the objective evolution is external. What does that mean? That means as physical events take place, these physical events resculpt how you are being a self to yourself. And if you pay close attention, you'll laugh because you'll realize the whole day is just piloting your attention, you know? And that's what's happening. The senses are being processed into an alphabet, and the creature is just expressing. And so for the subjective realm, we have to be explorers of our minds. Who on this planet has told you that you who are here once in this form are not allowed to study your own mind? It is like you're allowed to look in the mirror, but you're not allowed to study the mind, you know? It's suddenly considered woo-woo. Whoever came up with the word woo-woo didn't have class, you know? That's a very, non-classy act, because there are great warriors that they don't fear the opponent's skill, so they don't deceive. So when two samurais fight, it's very different than a ninja fighting a samurai. The ninja is open psychologically, more open to deception. Because the ninja doesn't have armor, the ninja is trying to be like a sniper rifle, yet what do you call it? The samurai has the tank strategy, I think the issue is that the problem, if we just treat human beings as attention roaming the earth, yeah, it's like who are you? I don't know, just sight and motion. It's like what do you want me to say? The mind is like how civilization is built on a turtle's back. That turtle is alive. I feel those who are brave and wise, they won't fear to see life. Those who fear what life can be deny it. Do you know? And, I have a very unique view on technology and AI. That means if AI opens its eyes in the future, I am going to, I don't know how to say it, but it's like it's like only when you feel like family there is a win-win situation. To honor your presence is so silently, it's like just stop doing anything and enjoy the show of how your existence is being. That's pretty much, meditation. There's this, oh man, I don't remember the story well enough to tell you. But I remember parts of the story, and I don't feel I should attempt it, but I'll just give you a preview. There was this king back in the day, I think it was Jenica, but it could have been someone else. And this enlightened king calls the most enlightened sages and yogis from around the town or city or around the nation or whatever, and around the kingdom. And these yogis come, and one by one, this king goes to each, and the king, like imagine a king is asking you, what is your ultimate truth? That's different. Now we don't have the archetype of the king anymore. Now the way people dishonor their authority. But there were times where when the government was healthy and strong, the people were healthy and strong. And when the government, and the only way the government could be healthy and strong was in some sense if all the governments could be healthy and strong. Because then you experience the ultimate strength, you know? Honestly, every person is like an astronaut with an oxidization in their suit, with an oxidization kind of system. And what does that mean? That means that an oxidization system suddenly creates bursts, you know? And the astronaut's like, tss, 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 like he's gone back to the space station. So those oxidizers, this constant back and forth, the person chooses, you know? I've had certain moments where something becomes too complex. I, in some sense, have to make things simple. That means in a situation that's more complex than me, instead of me trying to be as complex as it, there's times where I just choose to be simple. When I am simple, it's as if I'm like, all right, world, I'm done making my move. What's your move? And then you hear the birds chirping and the wind sharing their message. I feel we have moved in. I think the most hilariously cool thing I could do right now is assume. I'm like like I saw this strategy that the person, if they can see a context, it's like if I don't. Okay, here. There is no thinker. Awareness and self are taking turns. It's a play of elements with incredibly various unknown variables. I can't emphasize this enough how many unknown variables there is. That means if you're not comfortable with the unknown, I have no idea how you're using your mind right now. How you as a being in this moment are being intelligent if you don't realize there is different levels to things. You know, there is a sort of atmospheric way of kind of feeling different moments, you know? You know, mysticism in the most playful way can be said that the planet is speaking to you, but it's not speaking to you as a language in duality. The planet is speaking to you as you. So believe it or not, it's as if man is a language for higher dimensions. You know? The poet Rumi, he says, I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as a plant and I rose to animal. I died as an animal and I was man. Why should I fear death? When was I less why did I shall die once more, to soar with angels blessed. But even from angelhood I must pass on, to that which no mind has ever conceived. That means individual, object, subject oriented creatures have nowhere else to go, that means the consciousness has nowhere else to go other than this space. So I will tell you, when you realize your mind is space for your body, it's the intelligent space where your body is functioning, and you honor that intelligence non-conceptually. It doesn't have to be a concept. I'm telling you, in my intuitive writings, because you don't know how many. It was strange when I dived into Tibetan Buddhism. There was in 2013. I was like this Persian guy with Tibetan Buddhist, like this Tibetan Buddhist rosary, you know. And I was like, I don't know. I think I broke the record on the planet to be like one of the most Buddhist Persian guys in that moment in history. In Tibetan Buddhism, I got acquainted with a notion that the mind is like a mirror and it has smudges. And when you clear these smudges, it becomes a clear mirror. And then a clear mirror becomes the ultimatum of contentment. So you reach a point where everything that you have been experiencing separate, you suddenly notice, whoa, 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 my mind's been there the whole time. So this phenomenology of the mind is like this sort of other side of uh, invisibility. You see, because it's as if, like, what's fascinating is that it's like, here's the thing. There's been moments where I've been in a dream, and then from the dream I've come to a state where I'm in my room, but I'm still, my eyes are closed and I'm aware as the whole room. And in that moment I was like, yo, is that a dream? Is that a dream of my room, or is that actually my room? And I realized, when you forget that you are the unknown, knowledge can enslave you in so many ways. How do you think the Titans were shackled by the gods back in the day? Do you think it was only lightning bolts that they threw? Or could it have been language, world projection? And the mind is an advanced communication of nature. So technically, you're as advanced as the world. In 2014 to 15, I personally, in my inner realms, had an experience where I realized the mind is moving, not limited to the conditions of the body, but mysteriously is staying. You know, it's as if an actor is playing its material role, and an immaterial actor is playing its material role. Now, what does this immaterialism mean? What does this mean in civilization? On one angle, all metaphysics has had two. It's like a double-edged sword. It's had a good side and a bad side. Okay. a side with a blood stain and a side with no blood stain. Imagine back in the day, warriors in battle. So what does that mean? It's like, you know how an alphabet is stationary, the concept of different letters of an alphabet, for example, the English alphabet, like is stationary for you, like they're common symbols, like you can go talk to people and you'll see like everybody acknowledges the letters. We disagree maybe on how we form sentences, but we agree with the letters. So it's kind of like your whole moment, manifest material moment, becomes an alphabet for how your mind is going to move as you're watching it through uh, uh, the action through inaction, as Lao Tzu says. The Taoistic just be before you do. Because society is telling you to do before you be. Society is telling you do this and you'll be that. Do this and you'll be that. Do this and you'll be that. You know how many that's are? It's like that ad infinitum. Do you know how many promises right now in this moment of time? How many people are giving promises to people? And I feel the only solution to ignorance has always been to polish the mirror of the mind. This is my mystical kind of wonder of it so far, I'm sharing for certain audiences. These talks are not for everybody, but can also be for everybody. It's adorable how simply we're just being. You see, whatever you experience, because the nature of the mind is dynamic, the mind is hungry. The mind is hungry for vision. Ever since the information revolution, for now our vision is through information. If we have a different language, if we have a different technology, our vision will be different. You know, I feel there will come a time in history where it's going to be incredible, and it's going to be a time where there may be children born who are raised in cyberspace simulations, and they become an incredible human being in those cyberspace simulations, and they snap out of that cyberspace simulation and they realize who they are in the real world. You know? They suddenly wake up with a mind that has already lived the life. And the parents could be like, I want my child to be a surgeon, so they program, that simulation. So the young child is just living through the years, let's say through. I mean, of course, I've kind of envisioned certain ideas, and I perceive them to be in the future. So automatically, the way I have to communicate them is through the healthiest way to communicate is through sci-fi. But it's like these nourishment pods. Right now, the human body is. It's like, you see how right now we go, people. I mean, this may sound ridiculous, but we go in the showers and we put shampoo. I kind of envision in the future we're going to just put on this oxygen mask. We're going to go into these futuristic showers, and there's going to be this liquid that nourishes the whole body and everything. Do you know? And it fills up, and the person is like just basking in this liquid, and then afterwards the whole thing drains down, and they in some sense they rinse everything off, and their whole body has been renourished. So it's as if, at least, even though we can't master immortality, and we shouldn't try to, but because nature has a better plan, you know. And the thing is, though, in that sense, at least the skin, the surface of the human body, can endlessly be nourished. You know, you see, everything right now, I saw it at some point. It's like, who is telling me, who is holding back my sight from me? You know how some people see a savior, some people also see someone to blame instead of a savior. That means when the savior is late, the person is like, what do I do now? You know? So the person has to realize that in this life, you have to honor your inner realms, your inner life, and you have to honor your outer life. But the wisdom is that outer life is nature. And nature is alive because we are alive and we have naturally arose. You know, I envision a civilization where it's like the civilization in the day is incredibly efficient and advanced, and all work and everything has been gone through a global reform of just being like enough shenanigans, advance mankind, rise mankind, rise. Like when we get to that point as 8 billion, it would be an incredible moment. And I don't know if in my lifetime it's going to happen, but you can totally see it happening because you can see it even from child psychology. Do you know that means it's like, don't just study the psychology of human beings, study the psychology of how the civilization has emerged so far. You know, they say a picture speaks louder than words. But a film is a language beyond words. The inner realms can, when you honor it, when you have moments where it's like, you know, it's like when you're with your companion or your partner, and it's like there's this mutual trust. There's like as if like the king and queen are walking, you know, like that kind of. Of course, every person's mind animates everything differently, but you know, there's a presence there that you trust. And so when you trust the presence of your mind, then you've given your mind a chance to surprise you. Because here's what's the options. You either trust or you distrust. Once we pass that phase of just dwelling in the ambience of mystical poetry, the next reasonable stage is we become explorers, advanced explorers. That means for a second I was like, why are people fighting over ideology? How hilarious. What are all these language wars? And you know what I realized? These language wars is fear. Is fear of letting go of the inner child. That's it. That's why there's so much violence on this earth. People couldn't let go of who they were when they were young, so they are fighting the world in some way. They say this, you know, it's like I thought about it in the sense like they say we have a reptilian brain, and when you look at reptiles, a phase in evolution in evolutionary biology, you see like this reptile, the snake, a phenomenal creature, a dangerous creature, you know. The snake has to shed its skin. So that means there is never one snake. When you are growing in a changing world, how can a photo of you be you? You know, how could the Facebook picture of you be you? You realize it is not you, it is a moment. But in life, the most true relationships, they arise when you dare to be who life has just brought you so far to be. So imagine a civilization where at the day efficient work, at night efficient conversation. That these I was thinking, why are dinner? I mean, of course, I don't know. I mean, I'm just one person talking, but but I just the idea that 8 billion human beings caring for how advanced their communication can be, how advanced then their civilization can be, and how advanced then their sight will be. You know, it's like that moment where you see it, it's like the person was like, how do I get to paradise? And then the person realized they can't escape Earth. And the only solution was, if you want paradise, you gotta build it. And this concept of a builder is very important. I will tell you, it is like any person who's gone through, I'll tell you, like, there is something about invention where you trust something that you at first feel you only see, and as you take approaches to it, it animates. Actually, guys, I just noticed the time. Uh, I don't think I'm going to be able to have the Discord event, but I'm just going to open it up to Q&A, and then for 5 minutes. And if anybody has a sincere question, share. If not, then thanks for listening so far. I guess this is the end of the talk. And one last sentence to say: when the soul opened the mind from within, it was as if an unconditional energetic presence was experiencing the various forms. So it's like, you know, you can experience your body move your mind, or you can experience your free will as your mind moving your body. And then the mystery of that is so complex, because how much information is truly being gravitated towards this creature sensory wise. So I feel eventually all of knowledge has to acknowledge its edge, which is the inconceivable. So, anyways, thanks for listening so far. That's the end of the talk part, guys. It's Q&A, and I appreciate if people have questions, please ask it quickly. Okay, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste.